Hello and welcome. I'm Karen McNenny, author, mediator, co-parent specialist, and divorce consultant. And this is The Good Divorce Show, where we don't just talk about how to get divorced, but how to be divorced. Whether you're considering divorce, in the middle of it, or navigating life after, you're in the right place. And it takes courage to be here. This show exists to bring divorce out of the shadows of shame and into the light of education, and to challenge the idea that divorce must be destructive or adversarial. You're going to hear from professionals and real families sharing honest stories of resilience and repair, proof that divorce can be done differently. Divorce is not a weapon, it's a tool. And when used well, it can be a tool for transformation. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. I'm so proud of you for setting aside time to be divorce curious, to think about how the divorce you already have can grow and be better, to listen on behalf of friends and loved ones that you are supporting. This is the place to be for all of us to learn how to do divorce differently with less destruction and divorce and debt. And there are those people out there who absolutely see divorce not just as a failure, but sometimes as the right answer to a family. And today we're going to hear one of those stories, and we're going to pull back the curtain on an adult child of divorce and longtime friend, Kathryn Grady, who is a mother, a wife, a financial advisor, a community volunteer in her hometown of Missoula, Montana, a once upon a time actress, aren't we all? And she herself was raised by a single mom after her parents divorced when she was just 4 years old. And she grew up here in Missoula, a university town in western Montana. And she attended Wellesley College in Boston, lived in Chicago, lived in LA for a couple of decades. And like the best of us, we find our way home to roost. And she returned to western Montana in 2013 to raise her children alongside her husband. Welcome to the show, Kathryn Grady.
Thank you, Karen McNenny.
Yeah, here we are. We've known each other since preteen. Probably in the 12, 13-year-old days of our life.
This is true. We were both heavy in theater. And are you going to tell them that you were Peppermint Patty and I was Lucy in the school play?
Should we tell them that?
And we should.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. I was the Peppermint Patty to your Lucy. And our good friend Scott Campbell, who was Charlie Brown, actually went on and continues to have a successful career as an actor.
He's done so well. It's awesome.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting when I think back at that time, like I didn't know you were a child of divorce. Not that I would have, and we weren't in the same grade. We had another mutual friend who was a child of divorce. And what I remember in the 80s is that it was kind of like there weren't a lot of kids of divorce. It was a new thing. You didn't really want people to know. Maybe there was some shame and stigma around that. Do you remember that as a kind of a teenager?
You know, to me, it was just a given. It was all I'd ever known was being a child of divorce. So I didn't think anything of it. And I think that there were so many families of different shapes. And honestly, I knew so many kids whose parents probably shouldn't have been married that I didn't really think about it. It was just like a kaleidoscope of colors. And I think in the 70s and 80s, everybody was just figuring things out, you know? And so I don't know. I think there were bigger fish to fry in a way that was probably more economically, and it was economic. So then that ties back to who was married and could be a stay-at-home mom and all of that stuff in those days. I think that's where it showed up more was I could tell who had married parents because the moms almost all stayed at home. And then that meant in those days in Missoula, they would release kids for lunch and you could just walk home and have lunch. And so 5-year-olds did it. So the kids who had stay-at-home moms were home making like tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches and stuff. And I just didn't have that option ever. But I also learned that like if I left my flute at home or something like that, nobody was bringing it to me. So it instilled a lot of self-resilience in me as well, because it was just like me. Like I was going to school and I was staying eating lunch. Nobody's bringing me the flute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Because you were raised singularly by your mom. And in the 60s, no fault divorce, that law changed, which did kind of kick open the doors for a lot of women who found themselves in underwhelming marriages, abusive marriages, marriages where there was addiction or mental health issues not being addressed. They were not healthy places, and finally, they had an opportunity to make an exit. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you would take us back in time to the early 70s and what you have come to learn
Mhm.
about your mom's decision and what was happening in the ecosystem of divorce during that time.
Sure. Well, I mean, I have a lot of empathy for women back in the day. So my mom grew up, she was in the silent generation. So her teenage years were the 50s. So it was and in small town Montana. So it was so focused on, of course, you're going to grow up and get married. And her education choices were really limited because really could only become like a nurse or a teacher or a nun I mean, there weren't a lot of professional options. So my mom had to become a teacher. She did that, and when she married my dad and they had me, and then they had my little brother, she became a stay-at-home mom, and I have since read letters from the early '70s where the marriage is bad, my dad was volatile, and she wanted to get out, and there was no path to do it, there was so little but it's also striking, Karen, how similar it is to today. There was no, of course, affordable childcare. If she went back to work, who would take care of us? And
Yeah.
literally nothing has changed. It's crazy. So
Right.
long story really short, they ended up deciding to go ahead and get divorced. I was 4. It was not traumatic for me. I think what's sad and looking back on it, like I remember hearing them fight at night and thinking not just like, oh, they're fighting, but oh, there they go again. And
Mm.
for parents who are listening now who have small children and are wondering if they're doing the right thing, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this. One of them is that in my experience, being 4 years old, you really trust what your parents tell you. So when my dad took me out and said, you know, he must have said something to the effect of mom and I are going to stay together, or mom's taking you back to Montana. I don't remember being really rattled by that because they had come. I mean, you're in the zeitgeist of what your parents say. You do what you're like, I didn't have a lot of context in the broader world or anything like that. But what was striking about that era was that when my mom and dad, it was a mutual decision to separate. They were not at all getting along. My dad at the time told her that they agreed that they would separate. And he said, I'll buy you a plane ticket for you and the kids. You can either go live with my family in Cleveland or your family, her mom, and in Dillon, Montana. And so it was so patriarchal. Like it's crazy to me now to think back on that. And she said, well, I'll go live with my family. And
Were
so that's
you in were you in California as a
Oh,
family
yeah,
at
we
that
were in the
point?
Bay Area in California at the time. That's where we were when we got divorced.
And the default was that moms got kind of full custody, full
Exactly.
responsibility of the
Yeah,
children.
and that is also so striking. So she, quote unquote, got us, which is great. Like she was the stable one. I don't wish I'd been raised by him. But there was again, like, so now you've got a woman with 2 children and she can't really, the problem of childcare doesn't go away. What's she going to
Yeah.
do? And
Right?
so what did she do? She went back to Dillon, Montana, where she had graduated at the top of her class and had to go to college to become a teacher. And she was distraught. I think she felt like, gosh, I tried to get out. She lived in major cities around the country and really thought she had tried to do everything she could. And all of a sudden, now she is here in the early '70s. This is before the big divorce revolution, and she's back up there with 2 little kids. We were 4 and 2, or 3.5 and 1.5, really little. And so she stayed with her mom and thank goodness there was a teaching college there. She had to get recertified for some teaching for her license and then she sent out a resume all over the West. And she said, I would have loved to have gotten hired in Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, or some beach community. But there was a recession, and California was radically laying off teachers. And it was a real time of panic for her. And she ended up getting hired just 4 hours away in this university town called Missoula, Montana. At the time, Missoula is kind of trendy now, but in 1975, it was not. And so
No.
she ended up in a little tiny apartment. And I think now, with the hindsight of adulthood, I look back and I think, my God, nobody had any compunction. Like, Dad sold the house in Sunnyvale and shipped her the couch and a couple of, but nobody really were like thought about like, gosh, what does Jane need? Like, what is she, how is she going to manage with the kids? And fortunately, as a teacher, she was on the same schedule as we were
Right.
eventually. But in the early years, preschools, they didn't have summer camps and they didn't have all this wraparound. Back to my earlier comment about the world was so populated with stay-at-home moms. And fortunately, there were women in the community who really were more than happy to help out, and we would walk home with our friends and then hang out at the friends'
Yeah.
homes after school, and where the
We
moms
were
were.
the latchkey generation.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
but it is striking how little has really changed, and, we hear about this, but the truth is, like, mom got up here, she had a job, she bought a car that had no it was new, but it had no air conditioning, radio, like, it was a lost leader to get people on the lot, and she had a very glamorous aunt who came in from Hollywood, and Jeanette wanted to help out, and she offered to buy my mom a TV. We didn't have anything like that, and my mom said, well, she'd rather have a down payment on a piano. And so my mom got us a piano first, a little spinet. And I get kind of a clump thinking about it because I ended up majoring in music. I mean, it had a huge effect on me, but she kept showing up. And I think for moms, well, for parents now who are listening and who wonder if they're doing, I'm like gonna cry. But if they wonder if they're doing the right thing, when you show up for your kids and you take care of yourself so that you can take care of them, it doesn't matter how little the kids are. They recognize what you're doing and you're role modeling for them true strength and true self-love so that they know what that looks like and they can carry that into adulthood for themselves. It's stunning. So when people feel bad about getting divorced, or of course there's always fallout, and the older the kids are, we were lucky that we were little, but there is a real plus side to it, in that if you have a strong parent who's able to really make the choices, even if they're sacrifices, kids see that, and the arc of justice is long, and it comes back. My nana used to tell my mom, time is on your side, just keep showing up, keep doing the right thing, and
Yeah.
she was right.
Yeah. Arc is on our side. It sounds as though your mom really was this warrior woman coming like a phoenix out of the ashes. And it really left an impression on you. Not only a piano, but I'm sure other ways that you see the world, that you see yourself as a professional woman. Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that coming out of a marriage where you've had to swallow yourself, or maybe she never even knew who she really was coming out of the 50s. And so I literally saw my mom become somebody else over a period of years. It wasn't overnight, as she got her voice and her confidence and stood up to my dad and had built her professional reputation here and built a community. She was very thoughtful and very intentional about it. She says that she decided that because it was just her and she had to get two little kids to school on time, and in those days teachers really, like, she really had to iron her clothes every night. That was a lot. So, and then grading and everything. So she said she figured we were churchgoers. So she thought, if we have the church, we have school, and her job, and like that was it. Like, our lives were so pared down. So it was like every night we went to bed at 8 o'clock. My mom needed that time, I'm sure, to lesson plan for the next day and whatnot. But what I saw from her was her ability to just really prioritize what was important to her. And she said years later, she realized that if we turned out screwed up, that nothing else she accomplished would be worth anything. So I think it
Mm.
became easier for her to figure out what her priorities were. And she also said that she watched me at some point when I was in middle school, and she thought if I had a boyfriend around here, it could be a real problem. And so she didn't ever have boyfriends around or anything like that. And I I'm grateful that she prioritized us. I think that when you are, you know, you don't have two parents. It was just the three of us, really. We were like the three little musketeers. We needed her. We needed her attention and her time. We needed her to be stable for us. And it really paid off. And I'm sure, looking back, it's like that was a long time for her to put her own life on the back burner, almost 20 years. But I don't think she has any regrets about it. I think she got very clear about what her priorities were.
And as a child of divorce, what cautionary tale, what message would you give to those that are listening and thinking about their new dating life as a single parent and kind of that chapter?
I think it's really hard on my experience is I can only speak to what I think I would have felt, which is that I was really glad my mom didn't date. I don't think I wanted to see her giving somebody else attention. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted somebody else in the house. Now, I have friends whose parents remarried phenomenal people, and they are truly a second parent, and I can't imagine life without them. So, I'm not saying never do it, but I do think that one has to be very, very thoughtful about it before they're introducing somebody. I really cannot imagine going through all of that and then having that person leave the household because the dating fizzled. And so I just think that, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I just from my experience, I think that when you have children, you have a real commitment to them. And I think that that part of your life, unfortunately, needs to go in the back burner so that they can be raised without losing the attention of the parent and without having that stability and constancy of always being the apple of the parent's eye. Because you remember the kids are at school and they're ostensibly doing other things. They're not just there basking in their parents' attention,
Mhm.
but they need to have a stable, reliable source of comfort and attention and love when they come home. And I think when there's in my case, it'd be like a boyfriend in the picture, that's really gonna throw a lot of new dynamics into the mix that I think it's hard. I think we forget how much kids are really dealing with during the day when they're at school and how much they need a safe, constant place at home.
Yeah, and you say it might be an unpopular as a divorce consultant, we have lots of conversations about when dating should begin, what it should look like, how introductions happen, does the other co-parent meet them first, is there cohabitation? And I think what Kathryn and I are really trying to emphasize is be intentional.
Yes.
Everyone is unique. I chose to not ever introduce my kids to anyone. Now, a girl's got to eat. Not to say there
Mhm.
wasn't eating. And I had the benefit of having a really fabulous co-parent and equal responsibility to our kids. So there was time where I was alone and I could fill that. And it wasn't until their teenage years that I felt like there was a relationship that was established enough to even introduce my kids. But
Mhm.
we still never cohabitated in any permanent sense, nor did their father. And I also try to remind people it's a limited time that your kids are in your house. It's not your
Yes.
life. It's
Yes.
just this chapter. And like you said, we did make a commitment and we've already disrupted their world. So what can we do to stabilize within that disruption?
I completely agree with that.
It would be sort of an elephant in the room, I believe, if we didn't address your father a bit because it's unusual. And I have such a heart for dads, and I think there's a lot of dads out there who want to be more than an ATM and an Uber. They
Yeah.
want to be able to parent. They want to be present with their kids. Now there are those who exit the scene, and your father kind of said, he stayed in California and shipped your mom and the two of you off.
Yeah.
Tell us about how dad showed up in your life, the role he played, and why you see your mom's choice as one of the best things that happened to you as kids.
So my dad had, I don't know if it was bipolar or mania or what we call it these days, but he was very a lot of highs and lows and very he was like an overgrown kid. And actually when I saw The Sopranos and saw Toby's not that my dad was in the mob, but there's this sort of old school East Coast kind of approach to manliness and life. And I was like, oh, my dad's like the Irish version of this. Like he's got a nice big car and never wears blue jeans. He's always dressed up and very fastidious. But there were a lot of things to really like about my dad. But at the end of the day, I think that he thought that when mom took us, that she would fail or when he sent us off and she didn't. And what she found was when she had this little apartment and could sort of, if we're all tired, we're all tired. If we want macaroni and cheese for dinner, we have macaroni, and everything got a lot easier. So he came back and he wanted to try to make things work, like within 6 months of us setting up shop in Missoula. And she she tried it for a short amount of time, I don't know, but it didn't work. And after that, the narrative really shifted. It was that Jane took the kids and poor Joe, and he was really distressed and really upset about everything. And anybody who could listen, he was really the victim. He tried to make a living in Missoula and stay up here. The town had probably 40,000 people back then. It was small and or smaller, and he just was too volatile and too big of a personality to really be able to build a career here, and he just didn't like it up here in Montana. So he kept ending up back in the Bay Area where there was an endless amount of opportunity, really. And so we saw him. We would see him for a week or two, in the Bay Area or in Cleveland. We'd meet up with him there and see family and stuff. But mom was the constancy. She was the solid one. She was the one who was up at night with the barf buckets and signing the permission slips and worrying about how the orthodontics was going to get paid. I think mercifully things have really changed now. I think that one of the things that was so different back then was the default custody was just that it was the courts just put the kids with mom. So in that way, we got really, really lucky that mom was the stable one. It could have been a completely different story.
Mhm.
But through that, I do think that, when I do meet people, I do tend to say, like, if they're saying they're going through a divorce, I'm like, congratulations, because in my experience, it can be a very, very positive thing. And I think that, I never was sad that mom had left my dad, and people did do a little bit of pearl clutching growing up. But I think at the end of the day, people are so incredibly self-involved and they get on with their own lives, and they didn't really think too much about it. And it's a shocking number of people never even asked me about my dad, which is pretty telling. So
Mm,
if you're in the picture, you're in the picture. And if you're not, you're not, I guess, which is fine.
yeah. And he has since passed away.
Yep, he's passed away. And so, and the truth too is that because mom had to raise us in Missoula, harkening back to this conversation around lack of childcare and everything, she had to build a community here. She had no choice. And it's not like dad was sending money or I mean, it's unbelievable. So that as an adult, when so what happened is Missoula became our home, and my mom's home was our home. And now we're here with my mom as she's aging happily. We moved back up here in part to be near her and help her out. So the chickens really do come home to roost. I
Mhm.
think you really do, I don't know how many metaphors, but you really do reap what you sow. And I think that at the end of the day, we wanted to my mom is the one who raised us, and so she is where home is, right? And so you can't just dip in and dip out of your kids' lives. If you're not there sweating the small things, you're really gonna miss out on the big things. There's no other way to say it.
Beautifully said. We're
Yeah.
going to continue our conversation with Kathryn Grady, local hometown girl like myself here in Missoula, Montana, wife, mother, financial advisor. And we're going to dive in a little bit around these ideas of financial literacy. And so often divorce is seen through the lens of how will we financially survive this? And there's much more in the family story, but we do ourselves a disservice when we're not plugged in and educated about our own personal finances. So stay with us. If this conversation is resonating, there are tools to help you put it into practice. Grab my book, The Good Divorce: How to End Your Marriage Without Ending Your Family. It offers clear guidance for navigating divorce with intention and care, especially when kids are involved. And for ongoing support and education, you can join me at the Good Divorce Academy, which is my online community and classroom. And if you'd like to work with me directly, you're going to find more information at thegooddivorcecoach.com. Thank you so much for sticking with Kathryn and I today as we chat with adult child of divorce. Who better to unpack the effects of divorce than someone who's lived through it as a child? And we're always saying the decisions you're making today, in 20 years, are your kids going to roll their eyes? Are they going to bring anger and resentment? Are they going to say thank you? So, Kathryn, what would you be saying to your mom 20 years, 30 years, now how many years? 50
A
years
million.
later, 50 years since your parents got divorced, that she did for you? And as you can see now, kind of behind the screen, of how she protected you, supported you as a child of divorce.
She, I've thanked her many, many times, and you're going to make me cry, but I just think that to have somebody who can be put their own hopes and dreams really on the back burner to commit to raising the children in a way that is appropriate and fully realized is a gift that no child can ever repay, really. Oh my gosh, that made me cry. But she's not just my hero. She was a really successful teacher here for many, many years. And she always said she actually didn't want to be a teacher. It took her a long time to learn how to do it well. I think if she'd had her druthers, she would have been in the State Department traveling around Europe. She would have, and she's had a great life. She's still alive. She doesn't have regrets, but I think to watch somebody in real time have to completely shift what they hoped they would do and what they thought they would do to committing to what they are going to have to do is really phenomenal.
That is phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, it's an extraordinary commitment and what a gift, and 50 years later, you fully appreciate that now as a mother and a wife. Do you recall how she spoke about your dad? And over time, how you came to realize more of his mental health issues and how you were being kind of protected from some of his instability?
Well, she was very judicious because she learned early on with a couple of casual words that things little kids have no filter. So, she had to be careful, not to upset him and trigger him and all of a sudden be worried that he was gonna show up here and do something unexpected. But I think, um, her job actually, and she did it really well, was to not talk disparagingly about him. He was doing a good enough job on his own of painting his own picture,
Right?
and so she never dogpiled. She validated and she supported us,
Yeah.
but she never sat around. I in the 70s, there was this like growing movement of women who'd left really bad husbands, and they found each other, and they would all sit in our apartment smoking Marvels at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon every some summer afternoon, and it was great. You'd hear, "Well, Jesus, Jane, my husband, blah 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 blah," and they'd all compare stories, and you'd always think, "Well, it could be worse. At least my dad's not fill in the blank." And so I think all of us kids of divorce were kind of looking at things, but she never said it to me. It was in the zeitgeist, and
Yeah.
I knew even then that she was within her right to be complaining, but she never made us feel bad about our dad,
Yeah.
no matter how much he probably deserved it. And that was good. It was great to see her take the high road. I think that's important for parents to do that.
Mhm. Even when it is somebody who is damaging, unstable,
Yep.
undermedicated as they navigate mental health issues, like all the things. And as you said, there's the long arc of history. Like he demonstrated exactly who he was, and at an age you kids could draw your own conclusions and decide what kind of relationship you wanted to have with your father.
Yes, and I tell friends this who are divorced now. I say, just keep showing up and being the constant, the reliable, the boring, because it's a gift that will pay back to you in layers. Because as we evolve as adults, it's not like all of a sudden you wake up at 26 and realize everything. It's not until you have your own children, things reveal themselves in phases and you think,
Yeah.
holy smokes, my mom was doing that this whole time and I didn't even appreciate, I had no idea.
Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes parents in the moment, you're not realizing the impact of your decisions, your words, the eye roll, the support, the child who comes home after a great weekend with their parent. And all you have to do is say, I'm so glad you had so much fun with them. You don't have to
You're
steal the joy. Or if
no,
they're complaining, you can just say, it sounds like it was a rough time with your other parent.
correct,
Right?
and you don't have to get into a spending competition. If they're taking the kid to Disneyland, you don't have to do Disney World. Like, it's okay. It's okay to let the other parent have some wins. You have to get so true to who you are and what your relationship and what your role is with your children and what is actually important. And I just keep saying this, but I think the constancy and the stability, I do think, especially the way the world has evolved, we just are always looking for the next experience for our children and as if they're bored just learning how to live in this world. And if you have gone to school or you teach or you spend a day in a school, trust me, if you haven't been in school, you forget how arduous one day in a kid's life is.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard. And
Yeah.
so for them to be able to come home and maybe have a cookie and chill out for a little bit, that's enough. It really is.
Right. Happy days, Laverne and Shirley, after school, snacks, latchkey kids. We were all just recovering. We were
I
resting,
need it.
right? The
Yeah.
value of resting.
Yep.
How has, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper with you, Kathryn, because of our history. Um, you didn't grow up with a present father figure
Nope.
or really a dynamic model of what a husband could be, what a
Right.
partner and a father could be. How did that inform and show up in your life as you began to start relationships in your life and eventually deciding whether or not marriage was the right thing for you?
Well, I'll preface this by saying that a lot of married couples also don't exhibit
True.
good role
Good
models.
examples.
So
Yes,
what so I
I
think that,
agree.
in looking around as a child, I don't think I had a lot of good male role models. And those of you who know who you were awesome. But it wasn't like there was just it was black and white. There were friends who you think, gosh, I wish they were divorced. The
Oh,
dad
yes.
uh, um is really a riot over there. So with that being said, again, in the context of the era in which we grew up, the 80s were incredibly 50s. Like it's like, they actually had poodle skirts in fashion for a minute there. And so I think at the time we thought we were very evolved and we were all feminists and Geraldine Ferraro was running and all the things. But I was conditioned to expect that I would get married. And I remember, and I'm 5'11", and there weren't a lot of guys to date in high school. And I remember being like a low key panic of like, what would I do if I don't meet somebody? It was a little bit of like the race was on, which is hilarious to think. I was 16. I don't know. But I do remember then all of a sudden walking down the halls of the high school one day, and I thought, or I could just not get married. And Karen, the relief, like in that moment of that
Oh,
realization of like, if I didn't have to worry about finding a man, my God, anything was possible. Do you know? It was crazy. Like I literally must have smiled there on that second floor.
yeah.
So I did go to a women's college, and I think a lot of people assume it's because I had some sort of feminist agenda as growing up as a daughter of a woman. That wasn't it at all. Actually, I don't play football, and it was so 50s, and I wasn't a cheerleader. Like the football culture just wasn't where I fit. And so when I was applying to colleges, I literally thought, where don't they have football? And it. We were women's college.
Right? Emphasis on the
I want to be in a world.
education.
Really, that's what
I
I wanna be
Yeah.
in a world where, like, there aren't pep assemblies just for football. Like, I wanted to know what that would be like, and fortunately, again, my mother, I mean, we won't digress, but she was supportive and we didn't have any money. So I just got a ton of financial aid, and it really like I was very, very fortunate. But so coming out of college then, being at school with all women, I was very like empowered. Like I don't really like a fish in a bicycle. Like I don't know if I ever would really need to get married at all. And I had fallen in with the gay community. Like when I found gay clubs, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best. Like I love Madonna. Everybody here loves Madonna. Like, let's go. So I have a lot of men in my life. And it's easy to like meet some guy and hook up, I guess, if that's what you need to do. But like, I didn't feel any compunction to get married. And so when I graduated college, I moved to Chicago. I wanted to act. I was doing theater. And the very first show I auditioned for, I met a really nice guy. And we just kept talking and we started dating. And I said to him, I don't ever want to get married or have kids. And he said, that's fine. We'll just take it one day at a time. And it was such a revelation because there were a lot of guys out there in my early 20s who also seemed to be like, I'm gonna have 2.4 children in a Volvo. And that freaked me out. I was like, what's
Wow.
happening? They're 21 years old. So when I met Eric and he said, let's just take it one day at a time, that's what we did. And we kept dating and dating and dating and dating. And you cannot believe how freaked out people were. You're not getting married. When are you getting married? Blah, 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 blah. And we're like, we're actually probably never getting married. Like, I don't see, and my gay friends couldn't get married. It's early 90s, and it just seemed So in that way, I do think that growing up as a child of divorce did affect me. I think I did not aspire to be married. I didn't see, but it wasn't one thing because my dad was X, Y, or Z way. I think it was just this sort of cascading effect of society and where I was at. And frankly, the freedom I felt not feeling like I had to get married. And ironically, I think what happened is because I was so healthy as an individual and my partner was so healthy, we were able to be a very healthy couple, and we still are. We finally did cave and got married. And everybody's
After
like, "Well, you of all people." I was like, "Oh, it's a pain not being married."
10 years of dating.
10 years, we eloped to Vegas. We just got it done. I had no, I still don't. I just didn't have any. So I'm sure that's all a long tale of growing up the way I did, but I just had no interest in walking down and like it gave me so much anxiety to think about having to perform like that. So we just ran off to Vegas and we've been married ever since. We ended up having kids in our 30s, and no question, you know, my partnership and my children are the best things that ever happened to me without any question. But I feel very fortunate that I had a choice too. And I was able
Yes.
to make an active choice. And I do think that a lot of that came from my experience growing up.
Just curious, was the legal marriage precipitated by logistical, legal? We talk in our country about kind of the single tax, the benefits that you get when you're married, how the world sees you. I'm just curious, what was the switch for you and Eric?
All of our friends at age 32 all of a sudden started getting married, and it felt weird not being married, I think, and we went to some really good weddings, and we thought, "Well, we should if we're gonna do this, let's just do it now," and then but what happened is after we got married because I can't tell you enough, like, because I had, like, my jobs, like, I was traveling a lot, and I was working meeting new people all the time, and geez, people were, like the older generation was so freaked out, like, "You're not married? How come you're not gonna marry? Maybe you don't really love him, blah, 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 blah." It was exhausting. And so we thought, well, if we get married, it just kind of we're done with that and we can kind of move on with our lives. And it seemed to be the season for it. We had like 9 weddings we were attending that year. So when we eloped, we just told everybody, we'll just see you at your wedding and raise a glass. Like we really don't care and about ours. And that worked out really well. But as soon as we got married, it was so interesting. Nobody's ever asked me, you're the first person to ask me about my husband in 20 years. Like nobody cares. As soon as you use that label like husband and wife,
Yeah.
people are bored. The story's over. Now they want to know when you're having children. But our insurance rates went down. You know what I mean? Then I was pissed. I was like, oh my gosh, this would have the difference on this would have paid my student loan these last 10 years. But I also don't think I felt really grown up. I think I felt like young. I don't think I felt like I could even keep a philodendron alive. Like how was I going to make a lifelong promise to then and frankly like Britney Spears at that point had been married and divorced in 24 hours and my gay friend, you know what I mean, the gay community is like slogging through it and you're like this is a hot mess right now, like I don't really know what any of this even means.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to pivot from your decisions about marriage and kids to your professional decisions and how some of that has also been informed through the journey that you grew up with a mom as a teacher and the time that you spent in the education field and now coming to the financial field. Give us a few stepping stones to bring us up to date.
Well, when I was growing up and mom as a single school teacher did not have a ton of cash, but she had worked with a wonderful advisor here in Missoula who had helped her invest a little bit every month. And when I grew up and I was a starving actor in Chicago, she called me and said, "You've got to start investing compound interest." And we didn't have the internet. So like, she's mailing me like brochures and stuff. And I thought, well, I'm living on bouillon rice right now. Like I can't, this is a future Kathryn problem. Like I cannot do this. And when I got to be about 30, I decided like it was time to try to buy a house. And we were in LA. And I really navigated my way into USC, the University of Southern California, for a job because they had phenomenal benefits. And so one of those things was that they had just an array of investment options for saving. And I really needed that because future Kathryn was now freaking out. And I found,
Future Kathryn. I just want to highlight future Kathryn as an identity, right? Like now
yeah.
is the time to always be planning for future Kathryn. Okay, so pick up the story. USC, you're like, okay, time to get on top of this financial thing.
Yeah, and fortunately, Wellesley had an active alumni association, and there was a woman financial planner at one of our gatherings talking. And I thought, God, she's great. And I came home and I said, Eric, we have to hire her. You pay her by the hour. And it was $75 an hour, and we did not have $75 for an hour. And we paid her $150, and she helped us pick out our investments, and she got us on a plan. And we told everybody we knew, like, you've got to meet with her. And everybody said, I don't have the money. And we said, we don't either. Well, Karen, who was in a house within the year? This couple. You know why? We met with a financial planner. We had a plan. I don't know. Like, there's just something about putting that intention to it and having a coach. And so then we were like addicted to the financial planner situation. And so then we had another one. We were so poor, by the way. She told us not to pay her. she
Ah,
but we kept showing up. And then when we left LA, actually, we left our house where we had invested a ton of money and the market had not recovered. And so we got to Missoula. We wanted to be closer to family to raise the kids and stuff. And um, we bought a home here, but we still had the home in LA and we're renting it out because the market was so down. And our CPA called and he's like, you have to sell that house. Like, you're subsidizing the rent on that too much. Like, the rent isn't covering enough. And I was like, oh my gosh, if we sell this house, like, that literally was our 30s. Like, we just put so we did it and we took the hit and I could not sleep. I was hyperventilating. I found a financial planner here in Missoula. She's also wonderful. Met with her and she was like, you're going to be okay. And I was like, no, we're never going to retire. Oh my gosh, I'm 42. And she walked us through it. And you know what, Karen, we're going to be able to retire. And a couple of years ago, I thought I need to shift careers. I had been doing sales and other things, fundraising and stuff over my career. And I thought I want to have an impact for because of the financial planners, I know I'll be okay in retirement. So then the question, which is amazing, what a gift, what an investment. And so then the next question is, how can I use my like next 10 years of working to really have an impact? And so I have become a financial advisor, and I work with tons of women who are trying to figure out if they should do a career change, if they should get a divorce, how. And what I say to everybody with this, and I think that, for many of us, money is this monster that we just need to learn how to turn around and face, right? And once you
yeah.
face it, it's like the weakest monster in the whole world. As soon as you turn around and face it, the monster disappears, it runs away. And so if we can just find this strength to just turn around and face the monster, and you know, I learned how to do that because my mom had to do it. She had nobody to face the monster for her. When you're a single parent, you just got to figure it out. And so
Yeah.
watching her do that, I think gave me the confidence to do that. And now my great joy is working, and I don't just work with women, but I work with a lot of women. When you look around the financial planning zeitgeist, it's really male dominated. And I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of shame around it. I think that there's a lot of people who have made a living making other people feel bad about the choices they've made, and tying back to like rice bouillon eating Catherine in the 90s. Like, you I was just doing the best I could. And I think we're all like, and if I have seen anything doing financial advising, we're all doing the best we can. We really are. When people
Yeah.
have debt, when they don't understand things, it's not their fault. Things happen. And so if you can create a safe place where somebody can come, share, get some advice, every single person leaves better than I found them. So, yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey, I'll give you that much, but it's been a
Mhm.
great one.
So in a few little sound bites, there's somebody listening right now who is about to complete their divorce journey, and maybe they haven't, male or female, been really involved in the finances. They haven't ever really reviewed the taxes in detail. They don't understand the difference of retirement accounts, and they're maybe about to get a big asset or a big lump of money. And they have to figure out now how to do this life as a solo income household. What would be some initial steps and things for those folks to think about through your lens now as a financial advisor?
I think it's really overwhelming. I think that's like being asked to take all of your medical records and go on WebMD or on ChatGPT and try to make sense of it. Anybody's going to be overwhelmed and they're going to walk away. And I think if you can call me, find somebody who sounds like they're going to be really nice and supportive, and just come to them and say, I don't even know where to begin. because these aren't one and done conversations. You know, Karen, I spend a lot of time body doubling with people happily. So they come to me and they say, I can't, I hate this stuff. And I say, great, you grab a wine, a coffee, whatever makes you happy. Let's put a half hour on it, and I'll just sit there while you get into Fidelity or whatever and get your accounts. I
Yeah.
get it. It's a real pain. But once you have that information, I watch the stress just leave people's bodies because
Oh,
it's the fear of the unknown. So just find a Sherpa, find somebody who isn't going to, frankly, mansplain you, somebody who's going to listen to you, who's going to be a coach. We take so much care to find therapists and many of us do, and medical doctors who will guide us and whose advice we trust because we trust them. And so it's wild to me, but understandable that finances are like the last bastion, I feel like, in many regards. And it's so important. So many of us are just hoping we make it to retirement like we're playing the Hunger Games. It's like, well, I hope nothing goes wrong. I hope I don't get sick. Oh, I made it. That person got taken down. I'm going to keep going. Like, I'm not going to look over my shoulder, right? But then everybody does. And it just doesn't have to be like that in any way, but we just have so much shame, and the culture around finance has been very, very gated. And honestly, I think it's been intentionally sort of obfuscated. When you get right down to it, Karen, it's not really that complicated. I'm not saying it's easy, but
sure.
it doesn't have to be as mysterious as I think it has been. And you
Mhm.
have to ask who benefits from that when you have an ecosystem that is that gated and sort of that intimidating.
I think the starting point that you highlighted, Catherine, of like, here's your homework, go find all your assets, which in the divorce journey is one of the things you have to do. It's the discovery process. We need all your cars, their value, their mortgage, where's things, where's your CDs? Like, it just is a terrible homework assignment. And what I hear you saying is, it's better with a buddy. I'm going to sit with
Totally.
you and we're going to find all the things and check it off. Are
Yeah.
you tell us about the organization you work for now and explicitly the services you offer. And is it just to people within the county you live, in the state? Like, who can you help and how do you help them?
So I'm part of the Castronovo group in Montana, but I work with people nationwide. And so we're affiliated with Northwestern Mutual. And in that capacity, there's all kinds of services that can be provided from making, but at the end of the day, what I'll typically do with somebody is meet with them for an hour over Zoom, learn what are their goals? What keeps them up at night? Where do they want to be? What are they afraid of? What don't they like? Like, really unpack that stuff. People know when you think about retirement, when you think about what brings you joy, people know. And I have yet to meet somebody who says, well, I live on $2,000 a month right now, but in retirement, I want to live on $3,000 or $30,000 a month. Humans are shockingly adept at understanding what is relative to them. So we have that conversation, and then a week or two later we come back and I'll develop a plan for them. And in the meantime, if we need to collect it more information and more details, we'll do that. But the point is, like, let's start talking, let's understand who you are, and where you even want support and help. Nobody's the same.
Yeah. And I think there can be great relief once you're a committee of one. I mean,
Yeah.
I know couples like, we need to get our will. We should have life insurance. Let's start investing. And you've got a spender and you've got a saver. And like, money is such an area of conflict
Yep.
in a lot of relationships. Um, and suddenly when you are alone, it doesn't have to be lonely. It can be empowering that, oh, now I can just get all this done. And I don't have to fight the battle. I am a committee of one and I am taking care of my future. And
Yep.
I don't have to go to the mat over it.
Yep. Yep. I think it's incredibly liberating.
Mhm.
And I think too, you know, when people are coming through a divorce and they're like, I don't even know what I have, but this is or I don't even know what I'm gonna get, or I don't know what
Yeah,
to do with it, or how do I, like, all of those conversations can start to happen before the divorce is finalized and funds are getting moved around. There's
absolutely.
and a good advisor is going to work hand in hand with a CPA, with an estate attorney.
Yeah.
All of us, it's not just the rich and famous. All of us can have people like that supporting us. And it can be accessible just in the same way. I think 30 years ago, it was very few people had a personal trainer.
Right? That
No,
was so chic.
therapy wasn't as widely accepted nationwide as now everybody. Well, my hope is that the financial planning is going to be the next era for this, that
Yes.
people, and I do think that it has been a very one-sided domain up until now, not to keep banging the same drum, but I think, in the traditional family structure, the man took care of the money and then they went and talked to the men at the financial services firm about what to do. And women were told not to worry their pretty little heads. But of course, we all know women outlive men. People are
Mhm.
divorced. People are responsible for raising the kids without a lot of support. So it behooves everybody to get informed and get a team on your side of people who have your back and are going to provide the kind of support and expertise you would expect from your medical care providers, your weight loss providers, whatever your journey is.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Tell us where people can find you, Kathryn, and we'll put it in the show notes. But I
Okay.
suspect that your energy, your passion, and your perspective, someone's going to want to reach out and say, help me, help guide me.
Yeah. So my name is Kathryn Grady. And if you just Google Kathryn Grady, Northwestern Mutual, or find me on LinkedIn, you can reach out to me. And book a time and we'll just chat, as long as you're in the United States, I can support you and work with you, and I would be honored to do that. And I will also note that sometimes people, it's just not the right time for us to do anything yet, but at least we've met and then they know I'm here for when they're ready. And I'll even say, I'll check in with you in a year or
Wonderful.
whatever. But sometimes just having that initial conversation is enough to make somebody feel better.
I'm so glad you highlighted that. I'm always reminding people a conversation is not a commitment. It's just a conversation. And one of the gaps we have in the story of divorce right now is that we don't talk about it until we're in the heat of it. And the same thing, just because we're talking about divorce or learning what it might look like, what would happen to this asset? What would we do with our health care? How do we divide our IRAs? Like we're just getting information again to tell the monster to go away. It's the
Uh-huh.
unknown, and divorce sits on a shelf like a little threat,
Uh-huh.
the unspoken threat. Don't make me say the D word. And we're not doing education. And what I really appreciate about your approach and what I know about you is that you are all about empowering through education. The more you know, the more informed you're going to be to make good decisions for yourself and the other people in your life that you love and that you're responsible to. So thank you
Well
so
said.
much, Kathryn, for sharing your wisdom today and your personal story. It means so much to our listeners and to me.
Well, I want to thank you for the work you're doing. And I want to say, too, I just love the title of your book. And I love that you have such a positive approach to divorce. I think this era of pearl clutching and tragedy around divorce, when it can be a good thing and it can be done well. And the kind of work that you're providing and the kind of messaging you're providing is so valuable, and so many people need it. And there just isn't enough of it. It's so easy to feel like you should stay in a relationship because fill in the blank reason. You don't know if you'll have enough money. You don't know how to do it. Can't afford an attorney. What about the kids? And nobody knows about this better than you, but I just want to say thank you for amplifying a message that has not really been amplified at all in our culture that I'm aware of. And there are a number of people that are doing phenomenal work in this area, and I think you're at the top of the list. So thank you.
I really appreciate that. We are trying to make a movement. And for all of you who are coming along for the ride, it isn't just about me, it is about family centered divorce reform. And if you tuned in today because you are divorce curious or you're still in the heat of it and maybe you're in the recovery, I just want to remind you everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.